Yes. Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the PHA meeting, where we have the pleasure of welcoming Reverend Dr. Warren Leigh PhD. I've had the pleasure of working with Warren in the past. I've known him for a little while, and he's done some fantastic work up and down the country in helping dealing with some of the issues concerning many of us. Some of you have already seen some of the great interviews Warren's done. He's done some with Richard Forbes and other people. But tonight at PHA, we've managed to steal him from his busy schedule, and we're going to see what Warren has done to help many people. I'm also aware that Warren is a little bit under the weather, yet he's insisting on not counselling, and we're going to do our best to navigate through this. So if anyone has any questions as we go along, if you just write them in the chat, and we'll ask Warren at the end. And we'll take it from there, because there's a lot to go through. But before we start, Warren, if you see me looking down at all, it's because I'm making notes as you're talking as well, mate. So, because even though we've had this chat many a times, I'm quite aware there's so much to take in here. So, good evening, Warren. And if you can tell us a little bit about yourself. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Yeah, good evening to you, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming here tonight. I've been invited by Gio and Kerry and Catherine, and it's a pleasure to be here amongst the PHA members. Just to let you know, on Monday this week or next week coming, I'll be going to the Ukraine, and one of the things I'm trying to do is set up a PHA over in the Ukraine. So I'll be gone for a few weeks. If you want to connect with me, please do it by Catherine or Gio or Kerry, and maybe there's something we can do in a PHA sense to help Ukrainians, because they must be having difficulty getting medical help. Okay, so the subject tonight really is to present to you a methodology, a method, a tool, a powerful tool that you can use that is actually being ignored by many people. And I know all the hard work for the 3.5 years that you people have been doing, including us, and standing on roundabouts, leafleting, having meetings. I go to meetings like Gio does. We see each other at meetings to encourage people. And right at the beginning, I felt the best way to influence the way things are going in the future is really focusing on the local authorities. But because we did union work, we did a lot of firefighting, for individuals, which is necessary because a lot of fear was in the employment area, fear about your career, for example. So I became used to using, which I have done in most of my career, employment law, contract law, and health and safety law, and how to use this as a tool so you can actually challenge what is going on. Now, I like to refer to my notes because I've got so many notes, and I really should have prepared this in terms of logic. Okay, so most people don't know that there is a power. And I don't mean like Superman or Supergirl. Okay, this power is willpower, and it's also power in legislation. And they don't really tell you about this legislation power that you do have, but they know about it because I use it. And I've heard it in conversation, and I'll give you some proof in a little while how it works. Just let me turn the page over. So, okay, so I think the worry for most people is this DigiID, and because this covers everything. It covers mobility, transport, access to food, access to medical care, access to the internet, to the telecommunications. It's everything, and this is incrementally gathering pace. This is how it's happened. And as you can see that over my lifetime, I've seen how things are incrementally changing. It's not thrown at us all at once. Some things are, but this is. And we need to have tools so we can combat this. People in Thetford, for example, they form their own council, as Richard Forbes actually was discussing in the last couple of days. Now, the subject I'm going to tell you about is a community care association. And I'll give you the reason why the words are in there. And the mantra I tend to use is 3 words. It's engage, build relationships, and influence. And this is the mantra that works. Okay, it's not confrontational. Confrontation doesn't work. You know, I will go into meetings representing employees, and you cannot use confrontation. It doesn't work. However, you try to use compassion. That doesn't work with all the managers. We're dealing with policy here. We're dealing with policy and ignorance of legislation. All the health and safety, all the managers deal with is policy and how to implement that on employees. Excuse me, my mouth is sore. Just let me take a sip of coffee.
It's fine. So would you say, Warren, that this is something that almost anyone can do? Is it a straightforward process to do such a thing?
Very simple. Yes, Gio. You only need to know the headlines. It's not like reading a book, but it's, first of all, having the knowledge that certain legislation exists and a strategy on how to use it. And it's not difficult, but you have to be patient and you have to implement it gradually and carefully. You have to be like it says in the Bible, as gentle as a dove, as wise as a snake. We have to be using this. Really, it takes thinking and control, but you will do it. It's basically a Trojan horse technique. So what we're going to do is become a steering committee for the council. Okay, we're going to be taking control. I don't want to be a councillor. I sit in the council. I was there the other day, observing them, what they do, getting to know their techniques. And they're all on the laptops, 24/7 on their laptops. That's a lot of work. I want to be able to sit behind them and manipulate them, if you wish, but using legislation. And I don't like to use legislation in their face. So the process is quite simple, Gio, to implement. So,
all right, I see. So is it basically? So basically, it's something we could all do. It's not like that's what was concerning, I guess. It's like some people would be quite scared, thinking, okay, I'm taking on the council. How am I going to do this? What's the process? How do I start? Where's the starting point on this?
Okay, well, I suggest I'll be brief, and then within a few minutes, people can ask questions on how they can use it, and I can explain by giving you examples of techniques, strategy, and knowledge how you do it. For example, now I've done this, I get invited to the town hall. I get invited to business meals where the MPs are there in our locality, where the councils are there. I have an influence now, and it's working. And this is called, I'll give you, in the whole of the UK, the legislation is the Localism Act 2011. If you like to write that down, the one in Wales is the Wellbeing Act, but the Localism Act actually covers that. So if your issues are, how do you control, how do we stop the 20 mile an hour, for example, in Wales, the 15-minute cities? How do you get access to a food store when they want you to have a digital ID? What technique, strategies can we use? And by the way, you need people behind it. And this legislation actually says the council have to engage with a community group, not an individual. If you're an individual representing a community group, they will engage with you. But this is the power, okay, a power of a community. And that's it. I could go through the details with you, but I think just to let you know, if you look at the Localism Act, the powers there in England and Wales are quite tremendous for you.
I think that's the thing. Some people would think the Localism Act, does it carry weight? Is it a legal thing? But obviously, from what you're saying, it is. It carries a lot of weight. I guess it's knowing how to implement it.
Yes, I'll tell you what actually it covers. If you form a community care association, and the reason why I say this is the word care and community, they can never criticize you, because you say, well, we care about the community. We care about our community. So you can't be criticized about you want to care for people or for the businesses. And the one I set up was a community care for businesses. Why did I do it? Because the energy demands on the local hospitality industry are very, very high, like they are for domestics. But people are employed in Llandudno, along the coast here, in hospitality. And the domestic people, i.e. us, we rely upon the businesses, don't we? And this is where MPs and councillors will take note. They will jump up to this rather than the individual in a house. So it's a knock-on effect onto domestics. So I focused the Llandudno Community Care Association on the hotels. And that has now quite a big effect.
Yeah, I see. So basically what you're saying is, I guess, you set up wherever you're based, Chester, Crewe, or whatever, you set up a local community care association, like Crewe Community Care Association, and then you don't tackle it on your own. You get businesses on board. Is that quite an easy thing to do, to get businesses on board?
Yes, Gio. The technique really is you have to pick on one subject. If you went to a solicitor, for example, they would say one issue, one email, or one issue, one letter. When you start doing more than one issue, it dilutes the whole energy. So you need to choose one issue which everybody will be on board with. And fortunately for us, that it's unfortunate in many ways because the energy cost went up by a factor of 3 earlier this year. And one guy said to me in the gym, a hotel owner, he says, I normally pay £8,000 a year for the energy. He says, they want £40,000, sorry, £8,000 a month. They want £40,000 a month. He said, my hotel is unsustainable. Now, that one thing about energy unites everybody. I didn't get one person denying it, that it will affect their business. So using that, I can form a community care association. Why? We need to find ways where we can influence the utility companies and bring down the cost of energy. Now, people will say, well, you know, a local authority does not control the utilities. But the thing is, the local authority on the Localism Act has an obligation to find ways to mitigate any damage to businesses. They don't want to pay you out of our council tax because they are responsible. But what you can do by getting a community care association based on this one issue, you've got a community and the council have to engage with you. Okay, and how does that empowers you now, because you have a community behind you of all the businesses like I have here. And this was taken recently to, well, actually 3 months after the start of this campaign in early summertime, the local MP, he got to know about it and he took it on board. He took it to the Houses of Parliament. And just a few days ago, I got this letter back in Welsh and English, okay? And it's basically saying they have to do something about it. They have to try and find a way to reduce the energy cost. Now, what I'm doing here, I hope you see this. This is a Trojan horse way. I need to get in there and engage. This is the first technique to get engagement. Okay. The second one you have to do is build a relationship. So the issue really is not about power. The issue is about how to influence. That's the last of the mantra. So, but we need a technique to get in there. So I'm using energy as my technique, as my Trojan horse to get in there.
I see. So if we look at the PHA, for instance, we've got hubs scattered around the UK. Each hub will have its own, one might be energy, as long as they only choose one thing. That's what you're saying, focus on one thing and take it from there. But each hub they can all focus on different things. But it's the same process? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. But I can't find any other issue besides energy that will unite people. You know, you may have controversial issues, you know, like digital money, and people are ignorant of that. But you say to anybody, can you afford to run your business now that energy bills are 3.5 times what they were? And they'll say, well, we're going to be laying off staff. I can't find any issue. I mean, I like you to come up with issues. Maybe people on here would say, would this issue work? And we can debate it. But this is the simplest way.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what people are doing, if we go back to the beginning here, is you get a form, I guess. You go around your local area, you sign up your businesses to the energy, so then they're all on board because they want lower prices. And this then gives you some kind of, I wouldn't say authority, but almost you're going to be listened to now because you've got the business in the area on board when you approach the council.
Well, when I started doing this, all the big directors of the biggest hotels here, the Imperial, St. George Hotel in Llandudno, if you know it, they're all on board. You know, these are big guys, you know, 200 rooms in a hotel, massive turnover, huge energy bill. And they actually came very open to me and said, we have a problem. We want to keep staff because it's very hard to find good staff. But at the end of September, our contract for energy runs out. We will be on the 3.5 times. What do? We have to lay off people. We don't want to do that. And the reason why I did this, I grew up between South Manchester and North Wales. And never in my life have I seen, I would say 40% of the hotels close at Christmas time. This place is all year round. And when I drove down the promenade and I saw all these hotels close at Christmas time because they can't afford the energy bill, and there's 2 big hotels closed now for 2 years and they can't open. It means the impact on, you think of the jobs there now. You've got no receptionists, no waiters, no room cleaners, no electricians, no chefs, no kitchen staff. In fact, even at weekend when the children from school and colleges can get a Saturday job, there's no work for them. So we're denying the next generation opportunities. So we do have a responsibility, if we can recognize it, on how to help. And they're too busy. Everywhere you go, people are too busy to do this if they're running the business. So it depends on people like yourselves on here who are concerned, not just about energy, is how to use this group now. Once you've got the group, what can you do with this group? How can you affect the 15-minute city, for example? How do you affect the 20-mile-an-hour zone? Go on. Sorry, Gio.
No, that was it. I was just going to ask that, but you've just carry on. No, about 15 minutes it is.
Well, you see, once you've got a community care, and the word care is very important, and the community care group is a unincorporated association. Have a look on the government website for a definition of that, because you will be asked, are you an unincorporated association? Well, you are, and you've got no internal contracts between each of you. Basically, what you have is a common cause to help, to care for the community. So let's pick an example. The 20-mile-an-hour. Now, I haven't tried it on the 20-mile-an-hour yet because there's a group in Sussex approached me. They should be setting one up. There's one in West Yorkshire, and there's 1 or 2 other ones who are trying to set this type of group up. So let's speculate. How do we do this 15-minute city? Well, it's governed by contract law. It's governed by health and safety, okay, and insurance. So, for example, the local authority, and there's a planning division there, if they're going to change, put road obstacles in the way or close car parks, they have to comply with statutory obligations. That means they're controlled by insurance, public liability insurance. So when you insure your house, it's the same companies who insure the council. They insure the council members. And one of the things they have to do, and this is a brilliant item to look at, is the Health and Safety 1974 Act. Why? Because they have a duty of care. So, and this is where it goes back onto the Localism Act. They have a duty of care. Whatever they do, it shouldn't hurt anybody. So your argument should be, well, it's hurting my business. I can't afford to pay the electric. I can't do this. It's going to affect my children, etc., etc. That's a duty of care that they have. Whatever they do, they have to tick that box. This is a statutory obligation. That's what they run by. Okay, now when you bring in the Health and Safety at Work Act, 1974, there's a brilliant device in here which you can use to make them personally liable. First of all, they are responsible, but they work behind their policy. Now, this is what we're all facing now. You're not facing a land of legislation. You're facing a land of policy control, which started being implemented back in the 70s with the word human resources. Okay. I face it a lot, and I've spoken to barristers on this. We go into employment tribunals or disciplinary meetings, grievance meetings, and the managers, oh, this is our policy, and they hide behind their policy. And it's hard work to make these managers realize they are controlled by legislation. What's that movie? Maybe some of you have seen that movie where it's a science fiction movie, well, it's probably real life, where the guy wears sunglasses and he can see aliens, and he's having a fight trying to get the message over to his friend to see the truth. Okay.
Yeah, I know what
like
you mean.
That.
I can't remember the name.
What's it called? Do you know what it's called? I can't remember.
No, I can't remember the name of that one. I know what you mean.
It's not The Matrix.
He's trying to force somebody to wear glasses so he can see what he sees. Yes.
Yes, exactly.
I think
it's called They Live.
Yes.
They Live. Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Glenn, thank you. Very, very good one. And The Matrix is very similar. You're trying to make these managers realize that they have to respect legislation. And I took on a big university not long ago, and it was run by, I went to meetings with, and she was a barrister, a professor of law, okay? And even she rejected legislation in front of me. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But anyway, eventually, I managed to get one on her. I didn't want to, that wasn't the idea. I want them to comply with legislation protocol like ACAS. Okay, but you've got to be so determined. So what I'm saying to you now, this is not an overnight cure. You've got to be in it till the end. You've got to be driven by this. And it hasn't got to be an ego thing. It's got to be for everybody. And it hasn't got to be for money. What I do is I don't take any money for this, because I know if it can benefit other people, it will benefit more people and more people. And hopefully we'll live a life what we want to lead, without being interfered with. So yeah. I lost the track there, Gio, but the thing is,
well, we got the film name in anyway, so
yeah.
But yes, so basically what you're saying, obviously legislation overrides whatever they're throwing policy, but legislation will override that, even though they throw policy at people.
Yeah, but they will object to it. So when I took on Oxford University on this, I had three rounds on Oxford University, and the third one, it was a guy, a Polish worker, IT worker. We managed to get him 6 months more pay than he was going to get before we started. And after this meeting, I phoned up a lady barrister that I know. She won a Polish case with the Workers of England. When we had the Workers of Wales Union, she took on a case and won that case. And I said to her, what I've just gone through. She said, Warren, we're facing policy. It's all, she says, I face it every day. I have to impress upon people they are controlled by legislation. So what I'm saying to all of you, that's what you're facing. Policy is just an opinion. We've all got an opinion. And it doesn't work when I'm in a disciplinary meeting or a grievance meeting. I don't use opinions. I don't use emotions. You try to address compassion. It doesn't work. You've got to go straight for legislation. Okay, on this. So with the 15-minute city, how do you approach that? Well, the clue is this: you can apply to everything. It's magic. Really, when I think about it, it makes me laugh. It's the Health and Safety Act. Well, it's the 1999 Management of Health and Safety Act. All you need to know there is two things. If you can recognize a potential hazard, therefore there must be a risk. Okay, so whatever they do, believe me, this is where you use your opinion, but you need to justify it with evidence. You state that there's a risk, a real risk to health and safety. That means the council have to do a risk assessment. Okay, now if they don't do one, it's a breach of that legislation, and that's a criminal offence. It's a criminal offence. Yeah. Further, their insurance, because they do have public liability insurance, will state that they cannot do, they're not covered for misrepresentation. They need to comply with statutory obligations of being a counsellor. They have to show financial due diligence. Okay, there's a list of things they have to comply with, but the risk assessment is the most important one. If they don't do that, they have become personally liable. Now, that 1999 one, applies to the institution as well, but it does apply to the manager. The person who actually signed off that planning document to make it a 15-mile city is personally responsible. They think they're not, but they are. Now, one letter to them will not work, but the Community Care Association, with this knowledge, becomes you remove your ignorance. That's not an insulting word. You replace it with knowledge, and therefore you don't have fear. You go to the councils, and there's techniques what you can do from there on.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hypothetically, let's say the situation we're saying the 15-minute, 20-mile-an-hour cities. If you've got, let's say, people that care for the elderly and vulnerable, and they've got to travel so far, they usually do it in 30 miles an hour. Now they're doing it 20, so that means they may have to have less time with the person. Obviously, that's not meeting the standard of care. Would that come under that kind of thing? That, just as an example.
Yeah. See, anything can be made to cover things, providing you can justify it in the legislation. For example, the case you mentioned now, Gio, let's justify that. Under the Localism Act, which is what I'm about here, the Wellbeing Act, Localism Act. The Localism Act says if anything the council do or don't do causes you damage, they have an obligation to mitigate it. So the 20-mile zones now, you could argue, or in your case, it takes longer, and therefore I can't visit so many people. Okay, and therefore I can't make so much money. My wages are reduced by 20%. I am suffering. The hotels can do the same thing, the delivery drivers, the taxi drivers. So you see how you can apply that to every scenario, providing you do a bit of lateral thinking and justify it. And you justify it with evidence. So your community care association would go to the hotel or to the care home and say, look, we're very worried about this 20-mile-an-hour zone. How has it impacted you with caring the people? Oh, well, we can't get the doctors here in time, or the nurses here in time, or we need more nurses, we're paying more money because they can't stay as long. What do you mean? Well, it takes them a third longer to get here, maybe 20 more minutes. That's 40 minutes of their time, and that comes off our time, or we have to pay more. So providing you document a good argument and receipts and witness statements and show that the county council are responsible for doing this. And they'll say, no, this policy, no, you breached. The Localism Act actually says you need to pay for this now. Now, this is where it becomes personal, is they think they pay for it out of our poll tax. Okay. But you say to them, have you done a duty of care? Well, what do you mean? Well, we can't get the people here in time. Or have you done a risk assessment? How is this going to affect the care home? How is it going to affect this business here? You know, where's your risk? Where's your risk assessment? Oh, well, I haven't done one. Well, do you realize that because you haven't done one, your insurance doesn't cover you because there's no risk assessment? And by the way, if it doesn't cover you, how are you indemnified? So this is the argument I'll tell you about. The argument is then you say, and I do this all the time, you're not indemnified. So my client, the care home, the clinic, or DPG drivers, they want paying. And the council won't pay it. And because you haven't gone through due diligence, you haven't done a risk assessment and done this, we're coming to you for payment. And by the way, your insurance won't cover you. Therefore, you need to indemnify my losses for these taxi drivers. Okay. And you haven't done a risk assessment. Therefore, it's a criminal offence. Now, you know, we've got two ways. Either you pay, I'll do a deal with you. Either you pay the taxi drivers of the care home out of your own pocket, or we'll pursue this under the Criminal Act. And there's techniques to do this, by the way. So when this becomes personal, they feel it. And I will say to them, look, because you're not insured now, that's just cost £5,000 for one taxi company. There's 10 taxi companies here. That's £50,000. Then you need to pay my clients £50,000, not the council. You, because you didn't do a risk assessment and you broke the 1999 Management of Health and Safety. So these are the techniques that we use.
Right, I see how it can be applied. I mean, I know we're not on the questions and answers yet, but like somebody's pointed out here, there's a good question, which is, people want to know, is risk assessment the same as impact assessment in council language? Is it the same thing?
Well, I'll be honest, I haven't come across impact assessment. Risk assessment I use a lot, and use the legislation that way. Maybe somebody can define what impact assessment is, please.
It's not.
It was me. It was me, Warren. When we looked at the council stuff, by the way, but when we looked at the council stuff in Leeds, they talk about having done impact assessments as part of the planning process. So that's why I was asking that question. Is it the same thing? It'd be interesting to know whether there's something else that they should be doing and aren't, basically.
Suzanne, I remember we've had quite a few conversations, haven't we, on this type of thing?
Yeah.
One of the things that really help when we're never sure about these words, get the legal definition, because it's so important to understand the legal definition. I have a client from Chester, and he signed a contract and basically became liable for £270,000. And he had to demonstrate that he did all reasonable endeavours to do this work. And he thought he was liable for £270,000. But when you look at the legal definition of reasonable endeavour, it didn't mean that. It meant something else. So this impact...
Sorry, Suzanne, could you put yourself on mute? Just because it's bouncing back. It's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So this impact, it may not have the definition of risk assessment. Okay, so therefore they may not have done a risk assessment. They may have done an impact on whatever, but not identify the risk. And this is where they're not covered by, they're not indemnified by insurance. That's the weakest link for every scenario going.
Does that answer your question? Is it whoever asked? It wasn't you, Suzanne. Well, it was you, Suzanne. Sorry. Yes, I was looking it up as Warren was talking very quickly. I was quickly looking that up.
Yeah, it's a good question, Gio.
Suzanne, don't give me credit for that one. No. So yes, it seems like obviously people can use this at the moment. Energy is very important, and like you've said, I imagine most businesses would get on board. But it's a good way, I suppose, to set them up in the areas, people with the hubs where you start off with energy. So then you've got your community care association, and once you've got that going, you can then, I suppose, switch to other things. So you've got the power of the businesses behind you as well.
Correct.
So I guess you start off, that's what you're saying with the Trojan horse. You start off that way, and then is that what you mean?
Yeah. Do people, maybe we can get a response. Do people understand the technique I'm trying to use or I'm using here? Because people in the past have told me, how do we influence the councils? How do we engage with them? And that's a difficult part. So we've been given the opportunity by the rise in power, energy. Now, one of the things I do when I go to the council meetings on the calendar, I will sit there. And when I went there earlier this year, I'm looking for independent councillors. You know, independent councillors are usually more vocal. They're not politically motivated. Okay, they want to try and do some good for the community, and they want to do it next year and the year after. So I try to make friends with independent councillors, because usually some of these people are very good advocates, they're articulate, and they're pushy. And so if I can be behind that type of person with having an influence, that's the whole idea. How do we influence things? How do we build respect and influence?
I think some people are wary, or they're worried. I can see from what you've said that I'm dealing with my local council, wherever you're in, let's say Chester or a certain area. What power will it have? But you said, from what you've just said, the energy actually went to Parliament. So you were getting letter. It actually got to that level from the local councillor.
Yeah, I started in December last year when I noticed the hotels were off. And then it took me, I did a leaflet, basically. The lights are off. That means there's no work for waiters, and down the list. And then the next one was, are you concerned about this? And then literally I printed this out. I took my notepad with me. I went to the hotels. Can I speak to the director, please, about the cost of energy? And they came down as quick as a flash and went into their office. Yeah, we are concerned. I said, therefore, would you join our community? Now, I didn't tell them that was just me, but you don't have to. Would you join our community group? Because what we're trying to do as a group, the Localism Act actually says the council has to engage with us. They have to engage, and all we're trying to do is bring down the cost of power. Would you support that?
Yeah.
And every answer was yes. Then after, I had 20 people on my list, from the big hotels to the small cafes, and they all said yes. And that was my community care. I did that within 3 days. And I put that onto an Excel spreadsheet. I printed it out. I put my leaflet together. And from there on, I spread the word on Facebook. I opened up a Facebook group called the Llandudno Community Care Association. And I put a picture on there that everybody around here recognizes me as. Okay, so that is a way I started. Now, once these big boys, they're dealing with the MPs, they're dealing with the councillors. All the time, the businesses are dealing with MPs and councillors about all sorts of issues. So therefore, the news gets around. It gets around fast. And they said to the MPs, have you heard about this Llandudno Community Care? They're trying to bring down the cost of energy. So then I get an email from the MP office. We believe you've got a community care association. So they become interested then. They start to engage with me. But they start to ask questions. They'll say, why have you got one? So the way I respond, I don't answer questions like in being a rep. I will respond and say, in 2011, the Conservative Party actually brought out the legislation of the Localism Act. All I'm doing is using the Localism Act to help the community. And that shuts them up. Because they did it. They actually gave us the opportunity. They don't tell you about it, but I tell you, all the utility companies, they know about it. Because today I've had 2 meetings with 2 big utility companies and the council here in Conway, and it's been mentioned about the Localism Act. They know about it. So that's how you start. You know, they have to engage with you. It gives you power, basically, a lot of power.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So really, people starting off from scratch, what they have to do, like you just said, is go speak to local businesses in their small area, sign them up to maybe the energy, and we're using this. They might have other issues, but we start off with that one, like you said, the Trojan horse, and they can take it from there. Once they've got that bunch of businesses behind them, people start listening. And obviously some people, I get it, may be a little bit wary or afraid of it. I guess this is where they can approach yourself, or as you know, to start it going, to get some advice, because obviously you've done this, you're quite a fay with this one. A lot of people starting off might be a bit, oh, where do I go, and that kind of thing. So we have backup, whether it's PHA or yourself, or you can come to you through us, kind of thing. Or you're there, I take it, you've got your own setup for that to help them.
Yeah, it's basically, you have to be cheeky. Well, I don't. You're really motivated by the future. So anybody on this group tonight really is motivated to come here tonight about the future. Your concerns are my concerns. And I'm giving you a tool on actually ways to influence people. You know, the people in power, the ones we've elected. And if we do this early now, I give you this legislation knowledge and strategies, you'll be able to use it. You don't need to read and read and read. You just need the top level and the top strategy, and you will be taking control of the council. Look at Thetford Council. There's also an example in Crewe. We had a lady some years ago when we did the letters to all the schools. She's from Crewe, and she worked for the council on the refuse side, I believe. And they rented a public building for £1 a year, and they turned that into a food hub. Now, the council couldn't refuse. The Localism Act actually says that's what they have to do. So if you want a food hub, a free building, you pay for the electric and gas, and you bring the food in from the farmers at the back and you sell it at the front. And I know people are doing that. That is another way the Localism Act works. But it's things like medical attention, how to get food. I know we have the PHA, but what happens if they deny you access to the internet or access to travel? We need to have an influence before they do that. And we have to make it personal to the councillors who are personally responsible. And eventually, seriously, they're putting fear into you and all of us, and they don't realise what they're doing. They're using policy we have to impress upon them what they are doing. What governs them is contract law, human rights law, employment law, health and safety law. A lot of legislation covers them.
Yeah.
Bribery, for example, coercion, and they're not covered by the insurance for many of these things, and they don't realize it. And it's up to you and all of us to have the energy to apply this technique, but it won't work in one day.
No.
This has taken me 10 months to get here, and now this is being discussed in the Houses of Parliament. Maybe they will reject it. But the thing is, according to Mark of Peacekeepers, he said to me last night, he said they have to comply. Under the Bill of Rights law, the MP has to come up with a remedy now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It does. I mean, I can see what you're doing, and I'm reading through some of the questions coming through, which we'll get on
Let's
to
do
in a
the
moment.
questions.
Well, I was going to say, what you're doing, it sounds, you're obviously starting off and you're ramping it up gradually with each reply they give you.
Yeah.
That's how you're doing it. You're not going bang full in, because, yeah, I see what you're doing. And some people on here may think, well, you know, what do I ask them? But you just start off, do you know, do you see, keep it simple. And as they reply, then you start incrementally applying more pressure on them and putting them in a corner. I think that's the method you seem to be, I'm getting from this.
Yeah, correct, Gio. Maybe you're right. We should
Somebody did ask.
Go
Somebody
ahead.
did ask here, is the Localism Act for businesses only? Is it only for businesses, the Localism Act? Or can it, be private?
It's actually for groups of people. It's not just businesses.
Right.
It encourages people to form a community group, and it encourages the council to communicate with it. If you give me a moment, I'll read out what it does. The Localism Act 2006. It gives you the community right to challenge. This provision allows community groups, voluntary organisations, and parish councils to express an interest in running local services. So imagine the mobility, the travel aspect. You can say, well, Localism Act says I can run this bus group here, or I could run a train maybe, or a taxi company. Okay. Now, it also gives the community right to bid. You can bid for assets of the community values, such as an empty pub. Some of these pubs belong to the community centres, and community spaces like land, if you're thinking about you want to grow something, food. Neighbourhood planning. Now, there you are. The Localism Act introduced the concept of neighbourhood planning. I'm sorry, my mouth is very sore, so I'm having difficulty speaking. It allows communities to prepare their own plans for development in their area. So if there's something there in the road trying to stop you, and you're a community care group, you can make sure that that will never happen.
Yes.
That's what actually there's. If you look at the Wellbeing Act 2015, it's very similar. Legal authorities have a duty to take reasonable steps to promote and facilitate the involvement of groups with an interest in the local authorities' decisions. That means you're becoming a steering committee. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Also, well-being goals. Local authorities should actively engage with communities. Consultation requirements, promoting collaboration, engagement, sharing information with you, what they're doing. Okay. But it's down to you to be persistent and bloody minded and use this legislation, and don't use an opinion, just keep forcing the legislation on them. And you can do this better as a group.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, I think, quite often with a lot of things going on, is people bring opinions into it, which once you do that, you're not in the right place. You cannot bring an opinion into a council meeting. It has to be data, facts, whatever. That's the only thing they will listen to. Opinions, emotions, they're irrelevant. It'll probably lose you the information, lose you the case, if anything.
Yeah. Do we have any questions, Gio? Because I want to try and help.
We did have somebody that mentioned here, if people could just put in more questions as well, if you want, but somebody did say about the two ultimatums that were given, pay up or it will be a criminal offence. Isn't that the idea, to get the law changed, in this case from 20 to 30? Why wouldn't we give them that out? which is what we are trying to do by doing that, I guess. That's what you're saying. It's giving them, it's ramping it up to that point, just because they've got to prove how it works at 20. If things are going wrong at 20, then and they can't prove it, that's where we start ramping it up, I guess.
Yeah. What the idea is, basically, I don't want to go to court. I don't want to go to tribunal. I like to win without going to court. And that's what the court wants. They want you to resolve the issue without going to court. And I want the councils to respect the legislation that has been hard to obtain over the centuries and respect. I don't want them brushing the legislation aside for their policies. Okay. So that's the idea, is to battle away at them to make them change. The legislation is there, but they have to respect it. They've been propagandized, if I can use that word, to use policy. That's what I see for the last 3.5 years. Everywhere I go into, we have to make that, we have to tell them, and we have to actually, we do it with kindness, first of all, humble. We don't put it in their face, but when they do become obstinate, then we just turn around and say, oh, by the way, I'm concerned about you. What do you mean? Well, what you're doing here is you're closing a car park over here, and the cars can't park there. They're parking on the road, and it's become a risk to pedestrians now. So have you done a risk assessment? They'll say, well, no. Well, we kindly advise you, open the car park or do a risk assessment because you're criminally liable. And they go, oh. So you see, we're becoming an educational institution for them where they can't move without coming to us and say, can we do this? You become a legal resource for them, but it's for our benefit, for mankind, for our community. Now, imagine if we could do, all people from on here tonight are from all over the UK. If we have these community groups, which is backed by the Localism Act and the Wellbeing Act, it empowers you. You have control, but you're not. We need to exercise it. I can show you how to do that with basic legislation. And I love, as an engineer, I'm always looking for solutions, and that's my nature, and that's why I do this. Basically, if they put a challenge up, I want to find a way to overcome that challenge.
I think that's the thing, isn't it, with councils, from what we can see, or government, they go a lot on what people don't know, what they don't tell you, and they hope that you don't know the stuff, so they just keep pushing things through. And then when they find out they're dealing with people that do know, then they start going, oh, and taking a bit of a step back. But they assume that most don't, which quite a lot don't, to be honest. I didn't know a lot of this until we met and you started discussing it with me and going through things. I didn't know a lot of these things.
Well, it's like sorry,
go on.
It's like teachers who work in trust. I have a case now has been dismissed. 30 years as a teacher, and it's an ego situation where the teacher won't comply with the medical intervention, basically. So they've ousted her. But you see, it's not over yet, because there's different ways you can tackle these people. For example, most schools, many have trust, but they're public bodies. That means they have to answer to a council. That means there's a councillor in the local authority who has responsibility. So you can escalate the whole process. As long as you go through the whole process, you can take it to a councillor and make them aware, and they become, because they're responsible, they become liable. And there's a legal process within the council that they have to go through. So basically, if you can't win at the disciplinary level or the dismissal level, there's other ways you can do it. There's obviously compensation. Most people don't want to go back to the same type of employment, but we need to win. We need to win in this way. We need to make sure what they're doing doesn't happen again to other teachers. And we can do this with techniques, strategies. Okay. I think we should have more questions, by the way. Sorry, Gio.
Yeah, somebody has asked, somebody did ask, do you know anything about deemed contracts where the law is concerned? I'm not sure if that falls under this. I'm not sure if that question falls under what we're doing here.
I do contract law. Deemed, I'm not so... I'm aware of it, how they assume you to have a contract. Now, the assumption there would be based on contract by performance. So there's different ways to set up a contract. For example, during this lockdown or during this period where people were threatened with something, a medical intervention, or they can move to a different department of the company. Okay. Now, if you're accepted to be moved to a different department of the company, and you have to be careful, because by performance, you may be doing a different job. And that becomes a contract by performance. And it might mean that you may have been there 10 years, but what it might mean, you've been there 2 or 3 weeks on this new contract that you're not aware of, and you've done a contract by performance. And some tricky people will say, sorry, you have a new contract. Well, I've been here 10 years. It's unfair dismissal. No, you've only been there 4 weeks. You actually took on board new definitions, a new role, and that's a new contract because we paid you. And once you've been paid, you've got a contract. So that
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so that might be
somebody has asked.
Yeah. Sorry, Gio.
Somebody did ask, quite like this. Can I do this on my own, as in a sleepy area? I guess you can, because from what you were saying, you can set a community care association and just be one person. I can see, I mean, I can answer that. I think you can, of course, as long as there's groups of people, whether it's a business or in that area, you can do it as on your own. Yes.
Yeah, there's no rush about it. Well, there is actually, but you start off with that one issue, energy, because no one can deny it. It will affect the children, affect employment. People will be out of jobs. So there's a concern, and that's important because councillors and MPs don't like people being put out of work. So you've got a very strong basis to engage now.
Yeah. So I guess from here, I mean, it's all really interesting stuff. It's fascinating. How do the group of us here, let's say people, move forward from here? What could we do? Do we get in touch, set something up to move this whole thing forward in each one's area? Everyone's got their own individual thing. Somebody just asked, what about the utility companies? Who deem to have a contract with you? That's an interesting question as well. So what about the utility companies as well? Because they've got a contract with you. I take it you mean, the person asking that, I take it you mean a household. They've got a contract with a household?
Yeah, domestics. Do you mean domestic?
Yes. I don't know if that's what they meant.
Okay.
But
yeah, the idea.
Domestic, yes.
Yeah, Josie. The idea of this community care association to tackle energy was genuine, and you're quite right. The utility companies, they try to be apart from you. Okay, what I'm saying here, when you have a community care, you are worried about the electric bill, the gas bill, for the commercial, but also the knock-on effects is on domestic. So by having a community care association, you can force the council to engage with your community care group. Why? Well, the houses in this area, we're all affected by high cost of utilities. Now, what the council are going to say to you is, sorry, we don't own the utilities. But because you're a community care, you say, if there's any damage to the community, then you possibly are liable under the Localism Act. So therefore, we would like you as an MP or as a councillor to get around the table, bring the utility company. This is what I'm doing now for the area here. Get around the table with the utility companies and show that we are suffering. What are they going to do about it? Now, the council have influence with everybody, don't they? They do. They have influence with the utility companies. Those utility companies will come to a meeting, and then we can start working on them. We have to start working on, and that's the way we do it on the commercial side. And this is what the Conservative MP Robin Miller has now done in the House of Parliament. I'm using that energy requirement, and he's actually saying that they're trying to bring down the cost of energy in this area. He did it for the whole of the UK. But don't forget, this is basically a Trojan horse, as far as I'm concerned. So we can try and change the 20-mile-an-hour zone, the 15-minute city zone. I mean, how do you get access to food, for example? If they try and force you to use a digital ID, what are you going to do about that? Well, the way that was done, there's a case law on this 3.5 years ago when they did lockdown they said you couldn't come into the supermarkets unless you wore a mask. So Tesco was challenged under the 2010, have a look at this, 2010 Equality Act. And it was because they were denying access to essential services. Denying access to essential services. So you could do that on medical care, because hospitals are doing the same thing. You couldn't visit your loved ones in the care home. But it doesn't work it's more difficult if you're an individual. For example, we had a care home patient up in the Lake District, and the daughter couldn't get in. They wouldn't let her in to see her dad. And he was 90-something, you know. And as the Workers of Wales Union, I telephoned these people and said, look, this lady has got the Workers of Wales Union it's Harmony Union now, Workers of Wales Union behind her. And, you know, we are aware there's legislation which we don't want to apply. Out of compassion, can you arrange something? So, first of all, you talk to them, and it tends to work. But with Tesco, they denied access to this woman. It's the same with Costco. So it's denial of essential services is a breach of the 2010 Equality Act. And they paid £9,000 out, and they modified their attitude. So we could use that in many circumstances.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. It's good to see how it can be applied, especially with what's gone on over the past couple of years to whether it's vulnerable people or people in, you know, care homes, whatever. It's, you know, to see that we can apply it to that, because it's not just, like you said, we're not just dealing with energy bills, we're dealing with a lot of different things. Somebody has asked here, Tanya, don't the council have our utilities locked in through valuation office to our properties? So this would work. I think they do. If I'm right on this, I think they do. But like you've said, if you're dealing with your local council and it's proven that it's detrimental to whether it's an area, then they have to act. Even though they're locked in, they still have to act because it's detrimental to their area. Would that be correct?
Yeah, you have to do some lateral thinking in cases like this. For example, if you're a domestic and worried about something, you would focus your attention on the commercial side and say, look, our jobs are being threatened here. My energy bills are very high. As a community care association, we want you to take some action and influence the utilities. So it's how you word things, Gio. You've got to play intellectual table tennis with this, you know. So you got to be. When I was working at Red Bull Formula One, it's a real game for the boys. You know, you stand there inventing radical ways, extreme ways of how you can win the race. And some of the ones are impossible, but you still throw that into the game. Can we do that? It's the same here. You're looking at any way you can justify with evidence and concern, and the Localism Act and the Wellbeing Act and the Bribery Act and all these other ones to use for the benefit of the community. And by the way, two things. When you do this community care group, you operate it humbly and you don't do it for any money at all. You know, it doesn't work. If you go to the hotels or the businesses and they'll say to you, well, how much is it to join? It's nothing. We don't want anything. We just want your moral support. We will help you to try and save jobs. That's what we're here for, and to help the next generation. And that will
protect the community.
For the community.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It really is. I mean, honestly, I think what we're going to have to do, we're going to put a lot of this information below the video as well, the links to stuff. And like you mentioned, Harmony Union as well. If people want to get hold of you, or there's the Harmony Union, we'll put that website underneath as well, the Harmony Union website. But we'll put it with the information when we list the video. So yes, there's quite a few people. I'd be intrigued to see how much interest you'll get. But I know the PHA themselves, we are interested in that because we'd like to have that set up within the hubs around so that people take control of their own situation, environment, whether it's health or, in this case, what you're doing here. That's exactly what we're about. So I'm sure we'd be all over this as well. Somebody very quickly, I mean, I want to stop the question so we can draw it to a close, but somebody said, I understood that the net zero plan, if you cannot meet the use of net zero policies and cannot pay bills, you'll be fined £15,000. And if you can't, you're put in jail. You've come across this. I think you've come across this one before.
So I thought, how can we tackle that one? Again, with the Community Care Association. Now, if we can tackle this, again, on the health and safety, on the risk assessment. So for some house who can't afford 15,000, who can't afford to bring their EPC level up, the council have obligation to a duty of care obligation under the Health and Safety Act 1974. So as a community care association, if we actually as a group, so if somebody's picked on in our group, we can defend that. For example, we can use, not many people realize this, but you can use a small claims court. So, for example, whatever councillor has implemented that policy on that house, or said that house, you need to do this, otherwise we're going to do this. We find that councillor and we make them aware that we are concerned about their actions. Okay, you don't need a lawyer to do this. You need a community care group to do this, to work together. Now, we need to impose upon them what they're doing is in breach of certain legislation. Again, you're fighting policy. If you want to go further, what we use is the small claims court. Now, most people think small claims is about finance, but it's not. It's also about, for example, if someone drove the car over your fence and you don't want the money, you go to small claims court. Your Honour, I don't want the money. I want that guy to repair my fence or give me a new fence, and let him do it. So that's equity. So that's all I want. I don't want the money. Now, in this case, you would go to small claims court. If you're on Social Security, it's free. Or if you do it privately, it's £57, I think the cheapest. But what you go for is ask the judge for that counsellor who's responsible, statutory obligation, financial due diligence, etc., to issue a risk assessment to the damage is causing to that person. Now, you may get it, you may not get it, but don't forget, by the time you go to court, these days you're looking at half a year or 9 months. Nobody likes being threatened to go to court. We're all human, and that hangs over their heads. This is psychological incremental pressure on that counsellor. So in that 9 months, he has to put the evidence forward to the judge to counter the claim against him. So, and don't forget, because it's a risk assessment, a potential breach, it could be a criminal offence. He has to pay for his own defence. So it won't like that. So we can look after our own community, our own people under threat. If we can do it for one, they may change their minds, because we were going after them on a legal basis all the time. We keep it going.
Makes a lot of sense. That's where I think the PHA would also, as a group, would be interested in, because, like you say, if we set up within the community hubs, we have these community care associations, then if anything happened and they went after, we'd have a central place also to maybe get the information to you or get some advice. And because this is something that's, so a lot of people fear could crop up quite a lot with the, I can't meet this certain EPC, they're going to do this. So there's ways of protecting them, which I think is a great thing. Making sure
there's also ways to question the EPC, because the calibration methods. So scientifically, we need to question their test equipment. I think it's also opinion based. It could be operator based. I can't remember everything, but I've looked into some of this, and there's different ways you can attack this. So you don't give up and pay your £15,000. You challenge it. The whole idea is challenge. I've got one case now with, the guy comes into the Harden Community Care Association. He was being ripped off with an automatic rollover on his credit card for another £10,000. But when you look at the contract, there was 2 breaches in that contract by performance. They were getting very stroppy, arrogant about demanding that he pays another £10,000. But when I wrote to them as a paralegal, pointed them out there's potential breaches in their contract, they backed off. Okay. Now, how do I tackle that one? Well, if they come to it and they actually issue a claim against him, then you go for a counterclaim, breach of contract, and you've got the evidence. So we can do that with the £15,000. There's a lot we can do. It's too much to talk about here. There's so many strategies and techniques.
I think people here, we've had a few chats in the past ourselves, and there's so much to this. What we've discussed here is just a section of it. It's fascinating. So the good thing here would be if people want to either message, go onto Harmony Union websites, message them, or come via the PHA. We can pass them on to Warren and learn how to set these things up, because they have so much power. You don't actually realise. I didn't know until we had chats just how much power these little community care associations actually have in protecting yourself and other people. If you have a friend who's not a member of it and maybe something's happening to them, get them in, get them to join, and then all of a sudden they're part of it, and it's amazing. So I think what you're doing is fantastic work, and that's why when we had a chat once, it was with you, myself, Catherine. She was desperate to get you on here to do explain this, because it's just, there's so much power to it. We're only touching the surface here. And once people get to speak to you, and maybe if they need help, they set up maybe Zoom calls with you and what have you, then they start to realize more and more. We can't go all through it within an hour. There's way too much. I know, I'm aware. So, but if anyone has any issues going on and wants more information, seriously, I really do think we should get in touch with Warren, because it's amazing. I will say that we've had a few chats ourselves, and I keep learning every time. And sometimes we're just sitting here every time you talk, making notes.
Yeah.
So yeah, but thank you for that, Warren. It really has been fantastic what you've explained in that time. But there's so much more to explain, as I said. So if people want to reach out to go to Harmony Union or come via the PHA, we'll be reaching out to you anyway, Warren, because we'll be having what you're doing set up within the hubs, as many hubs as we can. So
You know what,
I hope
Jim,
you know that.
My concern about the way things are is people, and this includes me, we haven't suffered enough yet to do something about it. The apathy we know doesn't work, and this is why we're here, because we're not apathetic. It doesn't work in the past. We've tried it with flower power was one thing. This is well before most of your times anyway, but that partly works. It gave us optimism. So apathy doesn't work, and I'm glad you're here, because you're not apathetic. You're willing to do something. I implore you. I don't know any other method. I've tried many methods. I try to use legal methods, and we have to be strong and determined, and it works. We do it incrementally, and we can manipulate. By putting pressure on them, we can achieve what we want to do. And we don't go for big things. We go for our community. All these little communities, there's 38 of you on here. If we can have 38 communities all over the UK, and in Holland, I've noticed Rule is on here today. She's another fighter that I've known for a few years now, over in Holland, or the Netherlands. If we can have these little communities and we grow them with knowledge and strategies, okay, and we have some good strategy people. For example, many of you might know Edward Lowe from NEU. He was a friend of mine. He came here, me and him for a weekend. He's a lawyer, qualified postgraduate. He used to lecture in law at the University in London. Again, he's another strategist. He thinks the same way as I do, the same way as Richard, who's not on here tonight, other paralegals. So you have a team of people that will support you. I hope some of you will have the energy and determination to take on board what I'm encouraging you to do, for the sake of everybody.
I think they will, because especially when we put this out, because as I said, we're very keen to get this to hubs and the information out there ourselves. So I know it's going to, with the people on here, plus when we put this out there, I think more people are going to be interested in setting this up. So we're going to, you might be a busy bunny, Warren.
I need more than me.
Thanks to you. Yes. No problem. Thank you for everything, and thank you everybody for turning up. It's really amazing information there, Warren, and I know we'll be meeting up again soon and having a chat about things. But thank you to everyone. And sorry if any questions haven't been answered. I know we've had a few. As I said, you can either email PHA or go directly to Warren via his Harmony Union. And we can take it from there. I mean, I'm just reading now the very last one. Somebody did say, how can we find out where each of is located? But Kerry's, education at thepha.org. That's great. Yeah, so you can send an email there or directly to Warren. And there'll be loads of questions. I know this. We will try and go through them, whether it's the PHA. Well, I'll send them directly to Warren. So make sure he gets them. So yes, but thanks again, everyone. And I hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you, Gio. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, Warren. Bye-bye. Bye-bye, Warren.
Thank you.